Hello, everyone. My name is Maksim Sarychau, and today I'll try to explain a little bit what's the mobile performance testing, why it's interesting and useful. It's not so popular topic. Not so in the market. There is not so many tools which measure any kind of mobile performance testing, any kind of mobile performance issues and so on. And let's continue. I'm a test automation architect and Solved, and also co-founder of Maksim consulting company. And I have more than 22 years as software testing, and before I was a developer. And now I'm working closely with investigation, different solutions, and making proof of concept for different organizations and so on. Yeah, let's wake up a little bit, try to scan this QR code and answer one question. I hope it will work. If not, just let me know. Is it working? It has a question or empty page? You have a question, yeah? Okay, cool. Okay, let's wait for a few minutes, and I try to make a small story. How it started. A long time ago, far in another galaxy, we had figured out that we have complaints from the customers on the project. When we switched to a weekly release cycle, and the audience grew from 180 million customers and users to the more than 70 million additional users during quite rapidly time, during half a year. And we start getting complaints about performance, especially with loading, registration, and so on. And we try to figure out why it's happened and where it's come from. Because, of course, everybody thought about backend. It's the common issue about performance, that is some kind of backend. But after a while, we had some performance backend issue, checking, IP checking, and so on, database checking, and figure out that we had some minor issues, but not the critical one. And that's why we start to investigating what we can do to check real application. Because it was found that one of the biggest issues was in the even login page as a component. It was some kind of custom component which ruined a lot, and it was not catched before. And it was really a huge investigating process. It was a team for 10 people at that time, who we tried to make as soon as possible the proof of concept, how we can measure it, how we can do it. And I tried to answer some questions and explain how we do it and how we measure it. Okay, we have already 26 answers. Yeah, wow. I really like the number. Yeah, I can load really big. Cool, I can return it back later. I hope that this QR code will live during whole my presentation, because it has some timeout, but I didn't know exactly what's the timeout for this. Okay, let's continue the slides. Performance testing is some kind of non-functional testing, usually. It's related how it's focused on speed, with scalability, stability, and interaction time. Yeah, and why it's important. Because now we have so many applications, so many concurrency, and so many huge market for everywhere that people just abandon any kind of flag application. Even myself, I just download application. If it's slow, I just uninstall it rapidly. Yeah, and without performance testing, we might ship application which drain battery. Probably everyone had such experience that if you got some especially new application, and it's ruining your battery during few hours. And of crash or something like this. And yes, and as we recognize, 90% of all bugs came from performance blockers, reads blockers. Most of them are really deep inside the code, and it can take quite a lot of time to fix them. And yes, of course, it's really can ruin business reputation. I had some project before my current one that some kind of tricky release ruin reputation a lot. For example, App Store market was decreased from 4.2 till 3.1, something like this. And it was really a big gap for the company. Yep. And we investigate, first probably for a few weeks, we try to investigate what kind of performance testing can be used for mobile performance testing. As you know, there is two parts, let's say, here in this presentation, which can be tested without mobile application and which can be tested only on mobile application. For example, network simulation testing can be do everywhere, from your network, from web browser, and so on. The same with load testing, for just check the current. And stress testings, we can use the same without mobile application. But we can check real device testing without mobile application, and regression performance testing when we have the same device with just different application. And also we played with endurance testing. It was only executed a few times because it takes a lot of it. And after the testing, you can even throw out the device because it's crazy, destroy the battery and everything. And we just implemented it a few times because it's a continuously quick way. We try to reload application, install, and so on, unstoppable during 3 weeks. And it was tricky, but after this Samsung Galaxy 21 was unusable at all. Yeah. And that's why we decided to make some mixture between real device performance testing and regression testing. We will go deeper later about what we measured. It's how cloud looks like, because we use only real devices. Because on simulators, we can't emulate all kind of behavior what we gather to real users. Yep. And this helps us answer just one question, because we have weekly release cycle. We should answer the question, do we have this release some kind of improvement? It still keeps stable or decrease. If it's stable or improved, it's good for us. But if it decreases, we have to investigate why it's happened. Yeah. And we figure out the main, maybe it's not the whole list of the problems, what can lead for performance, but it's what's my experience, what we found, that application grow and it became more complex. It's evolution and so on, and it's time to time, it leads to that it's too heavy and it decreases performance. And often the most common, because it's a rapidly growing application with a lot of ideas, with a lot of feedbacks from the customers, and we implement new features every, let's say, 2-3 months. And some of the features are good, some of them ruin application, or even we have some integration conflicts. And since there are a lot of libraries in market, we try to use some different libraries in our application, but some of them are not finalized or not stable or can have some performance issues themselves. Even we found that some kind of Kotlin upgrades, Android SDK upgrades can ruin performance rapidly. For example, I remember 1 year ago we had Android upgrade from 35 to 36, and it was some beta version. Developers just investigated, and it's reduced performance around 30–40%. And it was really interesting. Yeah, and one of the interesting things what I figured out that even for Android device, especially for Android devices, when we upgrade from Android 13 to Android 14, the usage of CPU and battery was increased. But in theory, if you got the new devices, it should be better, of course. But CPU and memory and battery was leaking, but the visual effects are much better. And it depends really, and maybe this explanation why the new devices are not so often the best one, especially for Android. And also, of course, we can have some performance challenges, like for Android, it's fragmentation, stable network, and database issues, and it's really difficult to reproduce all kinds of performance bugs. It's a nightmare for developers, from developer point of view, and that's why we try to do our ecosystem. Yes, and Sometimes performance leaks are small, and we, one by one, each release, we get the small minor issues, but after a while, it's become really big user complaints. It's become really big problem for everyone. Yeah, and our whole goal was to build infrastructure, to figure out how we make stable environment with the same network, with the same conditions, with the same, and we even make a check-in loading of the application and the usage of application in different time zones, because this application is multinational with 20 languages and so on. And we figure out which time it's critical, which part of the year even. And for example, for Thanksgiving time and Christmas time, it's usually load is 3-4 times more bigger than on normal dive. And for example, when it's day in USA, and for example, day in Malaysia, one of the biggest users of this application, we can have some degradation. And yes, we try to use on real product environment, because for implementation, of course, we use stage environment and QA environment, but for real testing, we use product. And we have separate user for this to measure everything. And another tricky thing was how to collect all metrics, because no documentation at all. There is really few. Now with ChatGPT, even I ask sometimes, well, maybe have some ideas, but still, 50% of them are fake. Because if you try to use the same command, it will not show anything for you. And we have to debug deeply, especially for Android, for low level, how to get results from the device using ADB and shell and so on. And also, we try to make everything in one place. We have a real device cloud. We use it for automation and for manual testers as well. And we make it isolated. Let's say it's separate. It has separate network connection, separate devices, and devices don't change during release. We have from Android 9 till Android 15, and iOS from 16 till latest one, 18.4 something. Yeah, and we try to. The only thing what should change is the release. Everything should be stable, and it's how we do. Like I mentioned, we make private cloud. We create real devices with constant, everything is constant. We create everything on Java, because our automation was made on Java. Yeah, and we create, it was really big. I can say one of the biggest problems was to determine scenarios for performance, because it should be based and emulate real user, the most common steps, end-to-end, the most common scenarios, and we accurately create only 21, and for now it looks quite enough. And we have only, because we have to execute it on one thread, just to emulate the user to play, like you do with your device, just to play on one device, and that's why it takes time. Currently, one regression took around 35-40 minutes to execute all these 21 scenarios. Yeah, but yeah, of course, we execute it in parallel for different devices, but still. Yep, and this key performance metrics which we measure. One of them is frame rendering. It really depends of device provider, the graphic card inside the graphic CPU. One of the critical measurements was application launch time. When you close application and reopen, when it's refresh this page what you used before, and so on. For create a new account, it's not so critical, but reopen the application or install the application and load all the data if you have already user, because your information is growing, the database is growing, and so on. It takes some time to load your previous user. And of course, we check CPU usage. We try to emulate battery impact, but it's not so tricky, not so easy, because all our devices connected by real cables. And we play it a little bit, but it's sometimes become unstable. We can switch off charging device, and in this case we can measure battery difference and so on. But after this, it's as I figure out, it's not often we can switch on the charging, and we had issues that devices are processed for a while, but sometimes it's flaky. Switch on, switch off, and devices become discharged. Also, we check network traffic. Yeah, as I mentioned, login time and memory usage, because some old, especially some old devices, some Android devices, which we have a list of the devices from market, from our sales team, and they analyze the market, and we try to keep the devices which are most useful in the world, yeah, and just check it. Also, during the performance testing, we found some crash, application crash, which happen only on this device. And for one user, everything will be okay on another device, but on this device, it's crashed. And it was really, there are some really funny bugs. Some of them still present because developers say that it's a nightmare to fix them. Just keep it and just make some notification for the end users that if you have this crash, just let us know or change the device, something like this. Yeah, it's rude, but still. We use Appium on Shell and ADB based on Karina test automation framework, Java-based. Yep, and we create some storage in InfluenceDB. Yep, and visualize all our reports in Grafana, and orchestration everything by Jenkins. Yeah, and yeah, we have scheduled our execution for after release cut every week, and we have a separate execution for now for Android 14 as most popular to execute 3-4 times per day, just to prevent of flicking because of loading device network using and so on. And I'll show you and how it's go. We execute Jenkins. It's called Karina performance tests, which has 21 devices. And it's, of course, it's get connection to the devices by Appium driver and execute scenarios. And we have custom listeners is in our code. And it's possible to do in any framework. For us, it was easy to do it in Java. Just you need custom listener which collect all kind of user behavior, like scrolling, typing, and so on. And then we collect metrics in database, process them in Grafana, and if we have issues with performance, for now it's configured if you have difference from previous release more than 35%, it sends alarm for us in Slack. And for some developers who is responsible for this release cut, and that we have some performance degradation. Yeah. Here's some examples. It's not so user-friendly, let's say. It's a lot of numbers and so on, but here we can see the release number application version, which is used performance environment, and its difference between Android devices. As you can see, the login time is bigger on the Android 15 than, for example, Android 13. It is really interesting. Same user, everything is the same, just devices different. But graphic is better. Yeah, and network usually is bigger for the older devices. I don't know why. We investigated why it's happened, but it looks like sometimes if with older devices, it have more repeating tries to get the results. Yeah. And here's an example of performance degradation. If you be careful, you can check that login time was 1.47, and now it's 1.84. Because it's happened because we implement two really complex features in parallel, and it was release blocker. And this feature had some component which was not stable, and it's degrades performance quite a lot. And yep, and here's one more example for different release candidates. You can measure, and we have around 100 Grafana reports now. You can configure it, everything. I just have a few examples here. One of the most interesting is the next one, the graph for last 2 quarters. You see, the end of December, we implemented one really big feature, and yes, it was performance degradation. But we have to survive with it because it was a really important feature in the application, and let's say it's double the data what we use during loading and so on. And the last peak, it's this issue what we had with this two new feature implemented. I don't know, yeah, it's work. Yes, and we revert the code and devs fix it. Now it looks okay. Yeah. Why I spoke more about Android? Because in Android we have nightmare with variety of hardware. All providers have their own battery optimization. Some quality of hardware is not so good, even so for good brands. And it's really have to be tested deeper than for iOS. For iOS, there is limited number of devices. Mostly versions the same, for software versions the same, everything quite the same, but still we had investigated Android, but for iOS, but it was much more difficult to catch, especially because we tried to keep our cloud separately, not connected to your workstation and so on. For Android, you can do it easily. With iOS, we can use it remotely, but we can't get low-level metrics in an easy way. There is one solution on the market using Datadog, as I remember, but it was forbidden from our security because, as we recognize, Datadog sent absolutely everything to the Datadog's server, which is totally unsecure because it's and there is no way to, even for Enterprise Edition, to protect yourself. And it was, we implemented a solution, but it was cancelled. Yeah. Here were challenges we faced during implementation. It was really crazy. As I mentioned, it was collecting metrics. It was one of the biggest challenge. Then computer interactions was what we have already implemented in frameworks, but we tried to keep it as much as more quick to emulate the real user experience and make a listener to get it as it is and store in database as much as possible, quicker. And we measured ourselves that it's the same, like if manual checking, the end user have, and our testing. I measured myself, sit with devices, and played all the steps manually, and we have the time watch, and we check that it's maybe a really small difference, but in reality, we can believe for this data. Another challenge was to make visual reports because high management will lost in these numbers. For example, we should to prove why we feel this is some kind of performance degradation. Yeah, and then another challenge was to find what should be the alert different. First of all, we tried to make it 5–10% difference, and it's alert a lot of people that we have some performance degradation. But it was fluctuation. In this case, we just increased the number, and only if we have really big degradation, we highlight this for everyone. And yeah, and we should analyze the load. As I mentioned, we should check the environment, we should check the usage during time, daytime, and so on. And we did it, and still continue. Also, I try to implement now some kind of AI analyzer for this tool to compare the reports and make more user-friendly. Just to make a summary, because to summarize, we have to make mostly all reports manually and so on, for which device we have problems, for which device not, for which release. And for now, it's release checkpoint. Without performance testing, we can't go live and upload application to the market. Yeah. How it's helped? During these 2 years, we catch around 100 bugs really related to performance. It's primitive to use some flaky frameworks, flaky SDKs, flaky components. A few times we catch some loops in the develop codes, which when it's really impossible to even manually to produce manually. With some situation, the page start endless loading, get to endless loaded state. Also, we had some ads blockers because some ads were really heavy, especially for some kind of graph visualization, and we declined them. We ask another ads because usually, if you use an Android Ads SDK, they can upload anything what they want, and we had to filter it now. And yes, and I mentioned we had some unique crashes, only device specific. What else? Yeah, there are some useful links. It's about framework, some mobile cloud farm ecosystem what we use. It's for both Android and iOS. Grafana, yep. And also we try to investigate iOS Go. It's a really good library to work with iOS devices, but still it's not finalized, especially with getting metrics. That's why it's still under the process. And yep, probably that's all from my side. Questions?
Thank you. So, ready for questions?
Thank you. What are the biggest challenges you faced when you are trying to find the best solution for?
Getting metrics, yes, especially network metrics. We try to emulate with channels. We try to compare, because, for example, I do myself, I configure channels, I reduce network speed, play with it, and calculate exactly how many bytes, kilobytes, megabytes it was downloaded, and compare what we got from the ADB from Appium. And in the beginning, it was total mess. Yeah, and finally we found that it's really complex call to ADB and Appium just to collect exactly the same numbers. Because yes, it took around 1 month, I remember, just to make it readable, let's say, and real data. Yeah.
Do we need to start doing question assurance?
Did you face a situation where you are using different tools and getting different results?
Yes, we have different list of users, and we have changing these users time to time, just to make them clean and to check a fresh pool of users. We have 21 users for each test, but they catched randomly. We have checkbox, let's say, to have the same users, and we have checkbox to make it randomly. But fluctuation not so big, and that's why most often we use random user.
It's always a race.
Thank you for presentation. I have a question. What is the best approach for collecting data? To use real farm devices or browser stack, let's say, or some mixed hybrid solution?
We tried. For emulators, it's totally unpredictable. The same with browser stack. That's why the best solution was to use real devices. And from our end customers, it was cheaper even, because we have permanently regression for all platforms. Each regression is around 3,000 tests, and it took around 8 hours after release cut, to Android, iOS, and web. And if you order even for 8 hours, we have, for now, we have 54 devices, 27 for iOS, 27 for Android. And if you even order in browser stack, it will be, as I count, it will be $100,000 per month, or something like this. And implementing your own cloud, it was much cheaper. And we want to maintain, and we have maintained a team who check the devices connected, and everything. It is much cheaper than all kind of solutions in the markets. Yes, for emulators, probably it can be cheaper, but for real device, no.
I think the other side of the audience needs some question assurance. Good.
Ah, there we go.
You mentioned you tried to use Datadog real user monitoring SDK to collect some data, but it was collecting too much. But do you still, are you monitoring, for example, from Google Play Console, the mobile vitals that Google collects automatically, like ANRs and things like that?
We checked. Mostly we use Firebase. For Google, we had some solutions, but for Datadog, it was especially used for iOS devices. For Android, we have enough solutions. But it was really a big issue with the security team, because they figure out that we can use only small parts for Datadog, and we switch to analytics. But analytics can't collect low-level details for device. Datadog can, but not secure. I really hope that iOS Go finalize this version for checking performance metrics and device metrics, because it's growing but slowly. The owner somewhere from Japan, and the last update was half a year ago. But I really hope that he will improve this library. I try to implement myself, but I'm not so good in Go language yet.
I think it was our social experiment this morning that broke this side of the audience. They had it hard, they had it easy. Now they're not coming up with questions, but they are. What did you do? Well, we know what you did, but... All right?
Wow. And let's return back to this
One more
list.
Just small provoke question. So there is two camps, like users, Android camp and iOS camp. On your opinion, what is better, not just only in usage, but also to work with, like engineering? Thank you.
From my perspective, I prefer use Android because it's much more easy for me to tweak it, and a lot of solutions which I want to feel myself that I can control somehow this device. For iOS, I don't have such feeling at all. I think that some big brother look at me permanently, and if they want, they control me easily. Yeah.
So Big Brother is watching you all.
Yeah.
Can we get one more? Come on.
Or do we have to, you know...
It's your chance. Go for it.
There's actually one gentleman on your side that I would like to push. Yes, you.
Did you volunteer?
Yeah.
Very good. You see, this QA
Our
really works.
star question asker this year.
Unbelievable. Can get a moment. So I saw in your report, in your metrics, that you are also counting the API requests time.
Yes.
What do you think? I mean, does that overlap with just normal rest assured API testing, or do you see a difference in the response times just because of the platform?
It's mostly the same, but we now switch to Query Envoy just to avoid all such issues. And for backend, we didn't struggle any kind of performance users, even with 300 million end users now, and it looks stable.
So besides these tests, do you also have specific API tests, or
Yes, yes,
okay.
we have separate API tests. It's around 5,000 different tests for it. Yes, and we have some kind of normal performance testing from dev side, because they check themselves for all kind of backend, especially when we migrate for Query Envoy. Yeah, and for automation, yes, we have in our regression cycle we have Android, iOS, web, and API tests as well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Maksim.
Thank you. Here's my contacts. Just if you want, come to me and I try to explain everything what you want. Okay. Thank you.